Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. I told you in this first quarter of 2024, our whole goal was whatever we do this first quarter sets us up for success as we move forward. And in the Small Business Answer Man podcast, we want to help entrepreneurs and business owners find solutions so they don't become overwhelmed and stressed. We're hearing all that noise in the market, but you have to make the difference. So really, it's about really keying in on what I call the 6P business owner formula. And these 6 areas are people, productivity, pricing, promotion, process, and profits. So today, our guest is going to help us in one of those areas. What problem will you help our guests, our listeners solve, Brian?
No, Gary, I think the biggest thing I talk to entrepreneurs, the biggest problem I find them having is they get stuck in their business. Their business isn't growing the way they want it to. It's not as profitable as they want it to be. And usually we find that the problem is them and they need a slight tweak in order to make that change to scale.
I love that, Brian. And I think we're going to have a great conversation. And today with us is Brian Will. He's a seasoned entrepreneur, best-selling author, and a sales expert with over 35 years of experience. He's created 7 highly successful companies worth over $500 million at their peak. Today, Brian owns thriving ventures in restaurants, insurance, technology, and even real estate. Brian, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Gary, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today. This is going to be fun.
Well, I know there's a lot of different ways we can go with the experience that you've had, but I think I really want to kind of key in a little bit. Can you give an example of really applying a psychological principles when we're talking about sales and negotiation? Because for a lot of business owners, they're not sales minded. And when they get into negotiations, they always have to buy things, and it creates a challenge for them because they don't really know how to handle that part of the business.
You know, Gary, I tell people all the time that if you're in a sales situation and you're trying to sell something, I want you to think about what you're saying and the way you're saying it to your customer. And then I want you to think about how you would react if you were the customer, listening to you say what you're saying to the customer, if I don't confuse you there. Because if you're the customer and somebody's saying it to you and you will react negatively, your customer is also reacting negatively, and you probably need to stop saying that or doing it the way you're doing it. So the psychology of sales is always about what the customer is thinking and what you're saying, making them think that. And you really want them thinking positive and not negative. So it's all about the psychology behind what we say and how we say it.
Brian, I think one of the challenges that people come into is sales is not their area of expertise for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs. So what would be some of those common mistakes that really salespeople really need to overcome to really be able to become a better salesperson of their product or service that they're offering to people?
Yeah, Gary, I'm gonna start this by saying one of the most important things you need to understand is why should people buy your product and why should they buy it from you? And that is key to understanding why your customer is or isn't going to come see you. If you don't know why they're coming and you don't know why they should buy it from you, then you're just any other commodity product or service that they can get anywhere else on the street, right? And if you're just a commodity, you're never going to sell. You're never going to scale. So figure out why people should buy your product and why they should buy it from you. And that needs to be rock solid, locked in, wake you up out of a dead sleep and be able to rip that off right off the tip of your tongue. And once you get that done, then we get into the entire sales process of overcoming the objections and figuring all that stuff out. But it starts with why.
Yeah, and that becomes so crucial because otherwise, you really don't distinguish yourself in the marketplace. With some of your different businesses that you've done over time, what have you seen? Really, you talked about overcoming objections. Share a little bit about your sales philosophy when you're getting into it, once you've discovered that why and why you are should be the person that they go with. how can you overcome some of those objections and really move forward in your business to be able to make those sales?
It's about knowing what those objections are. No matter what you sell, if you've sold it for any period of time, you're getting the same objections over and over and over. So if we figure out what those objections are before we start the sales process, and then we build a script and a process around overcoming them before the client has them, then we can get to the end, we can get to the close much cleaner. And they are the same objections. If you ask any salesperson that's been selling a product for any period of time, and they'll say, these are the 5 things I always hear. And I say, great, now let's build a script and a process around those to overcome them before the client has it, right? If we do that, then we don't have to deal with it at the end of the sales process, which is what everybody traditionally teaches, which I think is the wrong way to do it. Overcome them before they have them by knowing what they are.
Yeah, I think that becomes so crucial because then you're preparing, plus some of your presentation can be set up that way. But I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do too. Yeah, but when you say script, I don't want to be scripted with my process. How would you answer that question?
So we teach what we call specific and general scripting. Okay. Specific scripting is something that this is what you need to say, and you need to say it exactly like this every single time. General scripting is around a process about how we take the person or the client through the sales process. I will tell you that there are different levels of salespeople. And if you are a master freaking closer, then you can say whatever the hell you want. But if you're not, then you need to say exactly what I tell you to say, because what I'm telling you to say will work. And when you prove to me that you can do it differently, that's fine. But until then, I'm telling you, scripting is the key to consistently scaling your business and having successful results over and over and over.
Yeah, I've seen it in multiple businesses. I've fought salespeople for that same thing, saying scripting. But when they do and they see that it works, then they become believers real quick. But it's really, you're eliciting that emotion from the client, and you're really overcoming those objections before they even come up, as you talked about earlier. But what would be some of the things that you would share as tips of, some of these things close deals? But when we get to the end, for a lot of salespeople, let's be honest, it's clunky. It's kind of like, and you start hearing that stuttering. Instead of it being a flow state, it becomes, almost like a hesitant state.
And I'll tell you exactly why that's happening. It's happening because a salesperson has been talking too much and not asking enough questions. And when you ask a question, you get an answer. You give them, I call it active listening and connective response, right? I'm actively listening to what you tell me and making a connective response to somehow connect me and you. If I tell you in my presentation something about my product, hey, Gary, I sell solar panels and they produce 1.1 gigawatts. Now, do you understand what a gigawatt is?
I have no clue.
And I'll go, right. So I'm going to explain it, where I've heard salespeople go, yeah, it does 1.1 gigawatts. And we've also got this and this and whatever and whatever and whatever and whatever. And the client's still trying to figure out what the hell 1.1 gigawatts is, because they never saw Back to the Future with Michael Fox, right? And then the problem now is we get to the end of the presentation and the client's sitting there thinking, okay, I don't remember half of what this guy said. And now he's trying to close me. Where if you will stop, explain what you're talking about, we call it pause for effect, check in, get a positive affirmation. Now, do you understand what a gigawatt is? Okay, well, what that basically means is my solar panel is going to light up your refrigerator and your air conditioning unit. And then I go on to the next thing and I stop and I pause and I explain it. And then I'm like, so do you understand how that works? You understand how it will fit your need? You do. And you understand the pricing? Yep. And you told me that was in your budget, right? Okay. See, I'm closing you the entire time, but I'm really doing it by explaining the product and having you confirm that you understand what I'm talking about and that you agree and you like it. And then we get to the end, it's like, okay, well, it sounds like everything is exactly what you're looking for. You want to go ahead and write this up? Where most salespeople never stop talking, and then they don't know what to say at the end.
Yeah, that becomes so crucial, because the 80-20 rule applies here. The more you can get your client speaking the 80%, the more you're going to win.
And the more you talk, the less they hear. That is huge. The more you talk, the less they remember.
Yeah. What a great philosophy. Well, I wanted to really key in on this sales because I think that's so crucial. It's early in 2024. We know small businesses are facing those challenges. We're hearing all the headwinds about election year, economy, all those type of things. But the only thing you can really dictate is yourself and your company of what they're going to go out to do each and every day. So
Mhm.
if you would share with them, I kind of looked back at some of your information and, you've had some great selling books, and I'm curious to ask you about the Dropout Multimillionaire. If you can give us a little bit about that and share with us kind of your philosophy that you have in the book and the information that you shared there.
Yeah, Gary, when I first wrote that book, it was intended to be more of a manual on how to start and build and grow a business. But the more I got into the writing the book, I realized that there were so many different businesses and so many different ways of doing things. And you can't write one book that's going to satisfy all that. And so it switched more from a mechanical standpoint to a psychological standpoint, more on the soft skills of building and running and scaling a business than the hard skills. The book is not about how to set up an account and set your taxes up and do, it has nothing to do with that. It's more about, hey, Gary, I know you started your business, but are you actually a CEO, or are you really the technician within the business that's out doing the work? Are you really the manager, or do you need somebody else who's more detail oriented? Who are you in the business? More importantly, who are you not? And who have you brought in to backfill where you're weak? And you can't fool yourself. It's stuff like that. It's all the psychological stuff. It's, hey, listen to me, Gary. If you've never built a successful business, you don't know how. Okay. And you need to bring somebody in to help you who has done it, who does know how, who can help you avoid the mistakes that you are absolutely going to make. And let me tell you some stories about how I failed and how I succeeded, the lessons I've learned. And you can take these lessons, you can apply them to your business and hopefully not make those same mistakes. So it's really all about the soft skills and psychology about running and building a business more than just the mechanical stuff.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because that's the challenge for a lot of business owners. They don't have some of those soft skills and the mechanicals. They are the person that created the widget or designed something or
Hmm.
had a great idea and then ran with it. And they get it to a point. We see that all the time. Yeah, I hear that. I'm sure you do with the clients that
Hmm.
you coach. And they've hit that ceiling of complexity, or really it's over their capability, and how
Hmm.
can they get out of that? So if you don't mind, would you share a story or a concept with them of something psychologically, maybe thinking about a business owner that is struggling with that side of it, that maybe the business has grown bigger than they ever thought it would. And now, to be quite honest, this early in this year, what they do is they get frustrated and they're like, how am I
Hmm.
going to get back there again this next year? Because last year, I never thought we'd do $2.5 million in sales or
Hmm.
10 million or 20 million.
I think people's capabilities are able to take them to certain levels in business. And you mentioned them getting out over their skis and their capabilities. I also call this their lack of understanding of delegation,
Mm,
which is what actually gets them in trouble, right? I've got two companies I'm working with right now that have hit that $10 million revenue mark, which is a big company, but they've hit that 10 million revenue mark without really completely understanding the math behind the financials and how your profit and loss statement can predict your future profit and loss, basically your future, not today, but your future, by doing what we call pattern recognition on reverse P&L analysis. They don't really understand the delegation piece. You see people a lot of times, Gary, that get into business and they're successful and they make money, right? And then they're more successful, but now they're working 50 hours a week. And then they're more successful and they're working 60. And then it's 70. And then it's 80. And now they have this business that's it's two or three or four, $10 million in revenue, but this guy's killing himself or this woman's out there busting her hiney. And she's like, I don't have any more time to put into this and I don't know what to do. And I got to fix everything because people aren't doing it the way they need to be doing it. And they're freaking out. Like, right. And the problem is they've never learned to delegate within the business. They've never brought people in to support them, to allow them to do what they do best and other people to do the detail work. And so we have to teach them delegation. We have to teach them that, listen, Gary, if your business is successful and you need to bring somebody else in, your first mistake is thinking you're going to bring somebody in who is going to be exactly as good as you at what you're doing. They will not be. If you can hire somebody 80% as good as you for that specific task, you have hit a home run. And you bring somebody else that's 80% as good as you to do the next set of tasks, you've got another home run. And entrepreneurs say, yeah, but they're not as good as me and it's not going to be. I know, I get it, I understand. But it's going to allow your business to scale to the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 levels that you can't scale to now. So you got to get over that. Everybody's got to be awesome. They just have to be 80% awesome. And then we can backfill and we can fix it. But it'll allow you to scale, generate a lot more revenue, a lot more profit, which we can take then some of and backfill that last 20% with different resources. So your business is never going to scale past your personal capabilities. It'll never scale past your lack of ability to delegate. You're always going to get stuck at that level. And when you'll know you're stuck. And that's when you need to figure out how to do the delegation, bring somebody in, learn how to backfill your weaknesses and all that kind of stuff. I like to say this, Joe the plumber, right? Here's my example. There's a guy named Joe. He worked for a plumbing company for 20 years, and the plumbing company billed Joe out at $150 an hour. Joe made $50 an hour. He's a great plumber. One day, Joe wakes up and says, you know what? I'm going to start my own plumbing company. And so he starts Joe's Plumbing. And Gary, if Joe's plumbing fails, ultimately, it will not be because Joe doesn't know how to be a plumber. It will be because Joe doesn't know how to run a business. That's why it will fail. It's not about the technical skills all the time. It's about the soft skills and bringing other people in who can backfill and do what you can't do.
Yeah, I think that becomes so crucial, is understanding we're only one person and looking at those skills that you have and finding those pieces that complement that, just like you said. What are our weaknesses? I mean, we all have them as business owners. We have our areas that are our strengths. I mean, I was always a very much a vision person, but man, put me in the operational side and it was my Achilles heel. I had to find somebody to run that area. I could give the vision of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, but I had to have that person operations. And we see that with a lot of entrepreneurs. They're very visionary, but they don't have the capability to really get the operations and put it in place to make it easier, because otherwise that becomes the same philosophy you talked about earlier. We start working 50, 60, 70. We just have to work harder to be able to get those numbers instead of really truly and enjoying the ride that's there. And I think that's the key for all entrepreneurs.
Understanding your weakness, right? Mine is details. I will tell you straight out, I'm terrible at details. If I have to sit down and do detail work, I will sit and stare at the screen for 10 minutes and be thinking about something completely different. I'm ADHD. I know that. I think in bullet points. I'm terrible at email. People think I'm short and rude when I'm really not. I'm just like, here's a thought, here's a thought, here's a thought. But that's because I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I do. So I know I'm smart enough to let other people do everything that I can't do. And it gives me a better lifestyle, a higher income, a better business. Everything about it is better. So you got to be honest with who you are and what you can and can't do.
Yeah, that self-awareness is know thyself. And I would tell any business owner, entrepreneur, if you know thyself and you're willing to look internal and then find out the resources from external of the right people to put on your team, boy, that's when you become, I mean, just like yourself, you're running multiple businesses and doing multiple things because of that area of it.
Yep.
Share with us, Brian, if you would, since it's early in 2024, we've talked about a number of different topics about sales, a little bit about them skills there. But what would you want to share with business owners, or what would you tell them to be able to get to the end of 12/31/2024 and for them to have success? And with success, that's defined a lot of different ways, but I'll let you kind of set it up for them to be able to set themselves up really for success as a business owner and entrepreneur.
100%. We call this reverse engineering your goals. Okay. I will tell you that the majority of business owners will start 2024 and they will say, here's my goal. And then they never actually figure out how to get that goal. They just have a goal in mind because somebody told them to set goals, and they move through the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and suddenly realize, well, wait a minute, we're not going to hit my goal. And they come to me and I go, well, where's the plan? And they're like, what are you talking about? look, what is your goal? If this is January 1 and your goal for December 31 is to do X dollars of revenue, X profit, X sales, X customers, where's the plan on how to get from January 1 to December 31? You got to build a pro forma for December 31 around all your goals, which is extremely detailed, and then back it up month by month, week by week, back to January 1, so that you know exactly what you have to accomplish today to get to the goal in December. What do you have to accomplish tomorrow? What do you have to accomplish next month? And that way it gives you daily, weekly goals that you have to achieve. And you know that if you hit each one of those tiny incremental goals, you will get to your goal on December 31st. If you don't have that plan in place, it's a crapshoot. You might get it, you might not. Okay. Reverse engineer the goal. It's like critical in sales and business.
That is great advice. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think so many people that hear goal setting and that's where they stop. They set a number, they set a target, and then it's like, okay, then we wonder why we don't hit the target. It's kind of takes a lot of practice to be able to hit that bullseye. I'm told, I'm not a big hunter myself, but I know a lot of friends that are, and it takes practice to be able to hit that middle target. And that's about engineering the success that you want to have. Brian, you've got some great things on your website, brianwillmedia.com. We'll have it in show notes for them, but I think you've got some books there that's available to them. You do coaching also, and I think you have an assessment. Can you share a little bit about the assessment and some of your information there?
Yeah, the assessment really is if somebody's interested in working with me as a coach, I need them to go through and answer some basic questions, right? I need to know that your business is big enough, that you have enough revenue and profits. I mean, selfishly, that you can pay me, because I need to get paid too, so I can feed my kids, right? But it's basically, do you know who you are? What does your business look like? What are we working with? The first question I always ask people before we start any coaching program is, send me the last 24 months of P&Ls on your business. And they're like, well, I don't understand. I'm talking about the future. And I always tell them, the future is a product of the past. I need to see the last 24 months. I need to track your core metrics. I need to see what the patterns look like. I need to see the which way are we going in your business? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it level? I need to know what your world looks like today, what it's been looking like for the past 24, so that we can talk about how to get to the future. If I don't have that and you say, well, I want to grow, and I say, okay, great, I'm going to help you, but over the last 24 months, your business has been going down, you don't need to worry about growing right now. You need to worry about stabilizing, right? So it's always about this assessment. Where are you today? What does your business look like in the past? What's it look like today? Where do you want to go in the future? And that's what the assessment gets into. It's just asking some basic questions so that we can get a feel for where you are, so we can make a determination on if we can help you to move forward.
Well, thanks for sharing that and some great information. And there's a lot of great information. His books are all on the website. So brianwillmedia.com. We'll have that in show notes for you to be able to take a look at. Before I let you go, Brian, I ask every guest the same question, is what would be your best advice for business owners and entrepreneurs?
So I'm going to tell you a quick story. You know Apple Computer, is that right, Gary? Do you have an Apple phone? I have an iPhone. You know who runs Apple Computer? A guy named Tim Cook.
Yeah, Tim Cook.
Tim Cook. Clearly very, very, very smart man, right? He runs one of the largest companies in the world, one of the most profitable, extremely smart. You know, Tim Cook has a board of directors that come in. It's like 12 people. They come in every quarter and they work with Tim and they give him advice. They sit down and they're like, hey, Tim, what's going on? And he says, this is my problem. This is my problem. And they say, based on our collective experience, this is the advice we would give you. Tim takes their advice and he goes out and he helps Apple Computer move forward. Tim also has a personal coach paid for by the board that comes in and says, all right, Tim, talk to me about what's going on. How you feeling? What are your... Tim has a board of directors and a personal coach to help him run his business. And he's one of the smartest guys in the world. If Tim Cook needs 12 people to help him run his business, what in the world makes you as an entrepreneur think you don't need anybody? You need to get a coach or a mentor to help you if you really want to scale and grow.
Great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Lots of great information. Please, if you would, like and share this podcast, let others know about it. Remember, brianwillmedia.com. Check out Brian's information. He has all that on the website. And in my one big action item, I'm going to go with the very end. You talked about a lot of great information, but reverse engineer your goals. You've heard people talk about, and you've probably already set your goals for 2024. But the thing is, it's early in 2024, so you can still go back and reverse engineer those goals and get them set out as what the targets need to be for the next step, for this quarter, for second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. So you achieve the objective. So when you get to 12/31/2024, I want there to be a pot of gold for that business owner or entrepreneur. I said, we don't want to see just a rainbow. We want the pot of gold at the end. That's the reason you're in business, is to make some money. Plus, that helps the livelihood of all the people that work for you too. Brian, thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
Gary, thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, listeners, I appreciate you joining me. Remember, like and share it. Let others know about it. We'll have another great guest next week, so please join us. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows, and you get your time back.